Hey ACT prep students! This video's purpose is to go over some general math test taking strategies for the ACT. So I'll go ahead and begin. First of all, most of this is talking about pacing. So depending on your goal score, you'll need to pace yourself a little bit differently. But there are some general instructions as far as strategies for everyone taking the math test. So the first one is, to get your best score, you must be realistic about your goal. So once you take the math test and maybe you get a 20, then maybe your next goal is getting a 25 or a 24. If you take it, you get a 25 the first time, maybe you add a couple of points and make a new goal. But if you're making an 18, your goal should probably not be a 30 until you get closer to that score. So make your goals in small increments, and then you can push past them and make new goals if you realize your first ones. The questions in the beginning are easier than the questions toward the end. I have said that in the introductory video, but I want to make sure that everyone understands that on the math test, and this is not all tests, in fact, it's really only the math test, where the very first question is the easiest and the last questions should be the most difficult. You may and should write or draw in your test booklet on the ACT. So you may and are encouraged to take notes and basically work through your problems, and you can work through them right on that test. If you need to draw things out, if it's some kind of geometry problem, then you can go ahead and write on those figures and cross answers off and circle and underline things in the question. Read slowly in phrases when reading a question. Speed reading could cause errors or waste time if you have to read it again. So you may feel rushed and stressed out when they start the timer, and you may feel like you need to read the question quickly, but what you'll find is you'll have to read it again and you'll ultimately waste time. So take a deep breath and read each question pretty slowly, and you will learn to pace yourself as we go through this program in practice. Underline important numbers as you read. So when you are reading through a question, underline anything that you know is important. It'll draw your eye and your brain to it, and you'll need to practice this probably as well. So just to give you an example, compare the first 6 questions, which are shown here. Lots of algebra problems. They seem pretty easy to do. Number 1 is even just a fraction, parts of a whole for blood typing, and these questions don't seem very overwhelming. And then if you compare them to the last few questions on the test, which number 57 talks about sine, that SIN. And if you don't know what that is, it might be challenging too. Number 60 is also about sines, and so that's trigonometry. Number 57 is trigonometry. Some of the other ones deal with probabilities and things like that you may or may not have covered. Not that you shouldn't read through these and see if they look familiar. You should try them all, but you don't want to waste time with things that you have never even seen before. You want to use your time wisely. So we need to pace ourselves. We're going to use a 2-swipe approach on the entire math test. I really love this approach, so listen up. First, you're going to work the problems that you know. And so you read a problem through, you're like, I know how to do that one. I've seen this in math class, you're going to do that one. If you come across tough problems, use a strategy that we will cover, and then go ahead and put an answer to the question, but put a circle around it so that when you have time at the end, if you have time at the end, you can come back to it. And never leave an answer blank. So don't just leave it blank because you're not sure about it. Go ahead and, hit it with the strategy if you're not sure. And then once you finish the math test, you go back. That's the second swipe. So you've answered all the questions, all 60 questions. You have maybe 5 or 10 minutes left. You go back and to your circled problems in your second swipe, and you look at those and make sure that you have tried on those, use a strategy, and you could look at them again. But that way you're not stressed out about finishing the test or leaving answers blank at the end, because you want to fill in all the answers on this test. Use all your time on the math test. It's crazy to see kids finish and put their heads down. This is not the time to rest. You are not in a regular classroom. This is when you give it all you have, and you don't give up and you don't stop until they tell you to stop, and you just do your very best. So I think I already said make sure you answer every question. So here are some pacing approaches depending on your ideal score. So your goal score, if the top score in the ACT being 36. So you might know that by now or not. But the lowest score you can get is a 1, the top score you can get is a 36. So if your goal score for the math test is a 20 to 24, which math is okay for me, but really I struggle with it a little bit, you're going to go slower on the first 30 questions. You know those are the easiest ones, and so those are all the algebra ones, and those are the classes you've had or are currently taking. So you're going to go slower on those questions, getting as many right as possible. 31 through 50, you're going to pick the ones you know quickly and do them or use a strategy. And 51 through 60, you might just guess. Fill in bubbles, C. If your goal score is 25 to 29, then you're pretty good at math, and you're going to spend a straight minute per question on 1 through 40. You're going to answer those diligently and work hard on them. If you come across ones you're not sure how to answer, use a strategy that we will cover, and then on 41 through 50, you're going to be more challenging. 51 through 60, you might still have to guess. If your goal score is 30 through 36, which means you're a math genius, then you need to get 55 out of 60 problems correct. So let's be realistic about that. You can only miss 5 problems or less. So 1 through 40, you need to go a little faster because the last questions are a little bit more difficult and you might need to think about them. But you don't want to neglect the first 40 questions, because if you miss those, then you might be also in trouble, because every question is just worth 1 point, no matter if it's easy or difficult. So, different strategies for different goal scores. There are 3 types of math problems that I see as I look at the math test. There's the first thought when you look at a problem, I know this one, and I made it green because it's like green light go. Makes you feel smart and wonderful and on top of the world, like you can do anything. The second one I made yellow. I think I can get this one, but I'm not sure. So I'm going to take a stab at this one, maybe use a strategy, something like that. And I'm going to try on this one. And then the red one, I have no idea what to do. I've never seen this type of math problem. I am completely clueless. It all looks like a different language, a bunch of numbers and letters, and not sure what to do. So 3 different maybe strategies for these 3 different types of problems. So here are the easy ones. I know this math problem, it looks like what I have done in math class. So it's almost like you were sitting in your math class and you had these problems thrown at you and you practiced them and you're good to go. So you're going to work the problem exactly like you would in math class. Don't get lazy on these because you want to get these right for sure. You want to own these. So I would work it just like your teacher taught you. We have excellent teachers and they teach you how to work these problems. So do it how you know it. That's how your brain is wired to work these math problems anyway. You don't have to show work on the test, but again, you should work it out in your test booklet. Just write it out and make sure you can even check the answer if you have time as well, like plug it back into the equation and see if it works out. The second type of problem is, I think I can get this one, I'm not sure. You have 3 options for strategies when you face a math problem like that, and I'll cover these more thoroughly later on in the course. But for now, I have ABC, estimation, plug in the numbers and check the choices. So when you use estimation, basically it's a picture. It's going to be some kind of a picture, and they're usually drawn to scale. They say they're not drawn to scale on the ACT, but they really are. So if an angle says 45 degrees, it really is 45 degrees. If you could, which you cannot have a protractor, but if you could measure it, and it pretty much is. So you can kind of use the picture to estimate if you don't know how to do the math. You can eliminate unreasonable answers, and this way, and we'll cover estimation a little bit more as well later. The second strategy, if you think you might know how to do it, would be if a problem has many variables, you have to find the relationship, you might plug in the numbers. So you're going to use 0, positive, negative, odd, and even numbers to plug in to find to an equation to find the right answer, and I'll show you how to do this later. The last strategy for ones we think we might know how to do, but we're kind of hesitant, is to work backwards. So you could try each of the answer choices. This is time consuming, so there's a warning right there, way time consuming. However, start with the middle value, not choice A. So don't start with A, don't go A, then choice B, then choice C. Start with a middle value and then figure out if that one works and move on from there. And the last type of problem is, oh man, no clue. So we're going to guess on these. Please don't waste time picking your favorite letter of the alphabet. Just pick one and bubble it in. And A, B, C, D, and E are all equally distributed on the test, so there aren't like 40 A's and only 5 E's on the test. They're all equally distributed as far as answers, so there's a 20% chance you're going to get it right, whatever you pick. So please just pick a letter and move on if you're going to guess. And this is, again, one you have no clue how to do. So like if it's a sine, cosine, tangent problem, and you've never had a math lesson about that, then you're just going to guess your favorite letter and move on. Last thing is calculators. You need to use an ACT-approved calculator, a TI-84. There's some other good calculators that are for sure recommended and approved. Use one that you're extremely comfortable with. Do not use a calculator that you don't know how to use. Don't use one that has a bunch of buttons you don't understand. Use your calculator that you use in math class. Take that one to the test. Check the batteries, replace the batteries. You may even bring a backup calculator. It doesn't have to be the same fancy one that was expensive, but maybe a backup calculator in case your one fails. Enter your numbers very carefully. Whenever I use calculators all the time, user error, that would be me, can put in numbers differently and come up with wrong answers, and it's not the calculator's fault. So enter your numbers carefully and use mental maths. Once you get a calculator answer, and just check it out in your head. Is that a reasonable answer for this question? And if it isn't, do your math again on your calculator real quickly and double check. You need to know some keys like the fraction key, parentheses keys, exponent keys, and root keys for like order of operations and stuff for parentheses. So we will cover that later again. So this concludes your introduction kind of to strategies on the ACT, and we'll hit each of the strategies and do examples and all kinds of stuff.